Napoli fans from around the world, welcome to Napoli Talk. If you are new to the channel, hey, I'm Domenico. Please consider subscribing and make sure to like the video, whether you are new or not. Otherwise, just enjoy these next few minutes together. Some managers are remembered for their style of play, others for the amount of trophies won. In the case of Napoli's Walter Mazzarri, he's a lucky man. He's remembered for three things. Taking off his jacket when all hope is lost. This usually results in us winning a game. Then there's the indicating to his watch for the officials to see that the other team is time wasting, and finally his post-match interviews. Now, I have a lot of respect for Walter Mazzarri, but there's something so audacious and eccentric about some of his post-match interviews. We have to discuss them, and that's what this video today is all about. So let's get right into it. Mazzarri's best, or maybe worst, depending on your point of view, post-match interviews that have made history. And let's start off with the 1998-1999 season when Napoli is playing in Serie B, and then Napoli coach Renzo Olivieri is disqualified from the game. So it's the young Walter Mazzarri's turn, the assistant coach, to go to the cameras after a 4-2 loss at home against Ravenna and introduce himself to the football world. Now you would think that as a young assistant coach, you'd want to make a very good first impression. Instead, this is what Mazzarri had to say to the cameras. There's very little to comment. It was probably our worst game of the season, a bad performance. The only extenuating circumstance, which I think is very important, is that half the team is sick, 4 or 5 players have had the fever this week, and one of them even played with diarrhea. This is the only explanation we can give. I mean, if there was ever a way to introduce yourself to the world stage, this is it. Talking about diarrhea in your first post-match interview has got to be up there as one of the best football debuts of all time. And from his first post-match conference, let's go to one of his last post-match conferences in a season where he was coach of Cagliari just a few years back. It's match day 25 and Cagliari are well and truly in a relegation scrap to stay up. They travel away to Empoli where they manage to finally salvage a point in a 1-1 draw. But for Mazzarri, there was the ref to blame, and no, not because of some strange VAR decision or something he didn't see on the field. No, something very different. It may seem absurd, but before the referee Dionisi's injury, we were in the game. Maybe not very concrete, but we had gotten off on the right foot with our ball possession, and this injury interrupted a good moment for us. Even our defender Lovato's injury affected us. After these injuries, the home team became more courageous and we conceded. I mean, the best thing by far about this quote is that the player's injury comes absolutely second. No, it's the ref's injury that really cost us. I mean, yeah, our own player got injured and that could have been a somewhat valid excuse, but no, Mazzarri says it's the referee's injury which cost us the game. I mean, in my books, this counts as one of the worst refereeing scandals in history, if this is proved to be true. Now, Mazzarri didn't just do this with the Serie A. No, he has a few of these on the European stage, particularly with Europa League games, which, as we know, Italian clubs never really take seriously. But there's one game in particular that really stands out for this. About 10 years ago, Napoli's Mazzarri are second in the league, but they are playing in that edition's Europa League against a very modest Czech Victoria Pleasant side. This is a team that Napoli should be dealing with very comfortably. And yet, at home, on a very cold Valentine's Day, Napoli lose 3-0. I mean, think about all those people that have sacrificed a Valentine's Day to go watch this team, and they end up seeing that result. Now, to make matters even worse, Mazzarri decides to put in a very famous post-match interview. Usually, the crowd at the San Paolo is warm. It pushes us. It helps us start well. Today, there was a strange atmosphere. Everyone was a little sleepy. Then, it was also Cavani's birthday. Everyone seemed to underestimate our opposition. Guys, my bad. I forgot that we shouldn't be playing when it's Cavani's birthday. I mean, how could UEFA do this to us? Thank goodness there's a return leg next week. And according to my calculations, that shouldn't be again on Cavani's birthday. So Napoli should be winning, right? Well, Napoli ends up losing again, and they get defeated 5-0 on aggregate to this Victoria Pleasant side. Let's just say it wasn't very pleasant. Alright, now let's go to Mazzarri's Inter days, and this is peak Mazzarri excuse banter era. Let's start with the opening game of the 2014-2015 season. It's Torino-Inter. Mazzarri is now an Inter coach, and he apparently gets very surprised of the fact that the Torino home crowd is doing what it's meant to be doing, which is supporting their team on the first day of the season. It seems to have put Mazzarri under a lot of pressure. The first half ends 0-0, and after putting on Osvaldo, a striker, on at the start of the second half, Mazzarri then decides to use his two remaining subs to bring on two defenders. Now, this is not bringing off strikers and bringing on defenders. No, he just switches two defenders for two defenders. Now, this is something that the Inter fans would not have appreciated. They would have wanted Mazzarri to go for the win. But for Mazzarri, this was just simply not possible. He ends up saying, Torino had the home crowd on their side. I was obligated with my choices. I mean, fair enough, right? The guy just wanted a clean sheet for the first game of the season away from home. Now, the crazy thing actually about this game is that two defenders got taken off, and not one of them was Juan Jesus, who ended up playing the full 90 minutes. Now that, for me, is a sackable offense. Mazzarri, bro, I beg of you, please don't ever do that again here in Naples. I beg you. Anyways, shortly after, Mazzarri gets sacked by Inter, but not before he has a chance to just fit in a few more classic excuses in there. Look, guys, we always talk about the fact that there's way too many games and that players are at risk of injuries, and it really affects their performance on the field. So, after Inter lose 4-1 at home to Cagliari, who can blame Mazzarri for saying the following? Unfortunately, there are some players that in this period of the year can't handle 3 consecutive games anymore. And man, I am totally for that. Except for the fact that this was just the 5th game of the season, and Cagliari and Inter had played the exact same number of games up to that point. Mazzarri, bro, what are you doing? And things don't get any better for Mazzarri after the scandal of having to play 5 games within a month. It's turn of going to Saint-Étienne, France to play a Europa League game. And in this game, Mazzarri has this to say after a 1-1 draw at Saint-Étienne. The field was slippery. We even had to finish the game with an academy player. Now, for me, these two things don't have any sort of connection whatsoever. But then I looked into this in more detail, and that academy player apparently had a pair of these bad boys on. And so clearly Mazzarri had to make that kind of substitution. and that's where things make a little bit more sense. And Mazzarri will not hold back against his fight on slippery conditions. You know, everybody keeps talking about Greta Thunberg this and Greta Thunberg that for speaking out about climate change. Well, actually, educate yourselves. It's Walter Mazzarri who was the very first activist. He was the first to speak of the very real impact that climate change can have, of these incredibly fast changing conditions nowadays. In 2014, after a 2-2 draw against Verona, he has this to say. In fact, we were down to 10 and we suffered a bit. Let's not forget that we are in an emergency. It was predictable that the guys would drop. Then it also started raining. Guys, climate change is real. It has very real impacts, like rain coming out of nowhere, and that's why you drop points. So if you don't want your team to drop points, then think about climate change. And finally, this wasn't the first time that Mazzarri was annoyed with how the world works. After fighting the fixture lists at the start of the season to then fighting the weather, it's now turned to take the fight on to the football system as a whole. Now guys, in 130 years of football, we've changed the game many times. From the way the offside is played, to how substitutions are made and the number of substitutions. But in all this time, no one has put into question how you can score a goal. You just simply have to put the ball in the back of the net. And then comes Mazzarri. After losing 1-2 in a game against Atalanta, in a game where his side hits the crossbar twice and hits the post twice, Mazzarri has this suggestion for FIFA. The rules should be changed a little bit. Every X corner is taken, every X woodworks hit, a goal should be awarded. This is to say, our team is playing, producing, let's reward it. Guys, I mean, Mazzarri has a point here. And for all of you guys that criticize this, well, guess what? Some of the biggest geniuses of history have been criticized for their breakthrough opinions, all right? Just accept the fact that Mazzarri is a genius. Guys, if you've liked this video, then smash that like button. And if I get over 150 likes on this video, then I will give you my top 5 Mazzarri games when he was a Napoli manager the first time. And as always, Forza Napoli sempre. Ciao.